Hello and welcome to Russ's Movie Corner, and as you can see, I am sitting in front of my movie corner. Last week I went and saw No Time to Die, which was amazing. I did a whole review, posted it up on my channel. I said that this week I was actually going to be seeing Dune, which I just did, and it's amazing, which is what we're going to talk about today. But before we sit down and kind of, discuss the actual film, I'm going to kind of do a little bit of a history lesson. I'm going to talk about the film, and then I'm going to end, and then I'm going to have a second part that I'm going to post up where I'm going to kind of go more in depth into what the film's themes are and how things work. Okay? So I want to challenge you that if you haven't seen the film, go see it. It is absolutely amazing. Even if you've never actually read the novel, you will absolutely love the film. Okay? So you can see right here that I have the actual limited edition, extended edition steelbook of Dune on my shelf. And you'll notice that right behind my head, right here, there's a little bit of a space because I took down the miniseries, okay? Because we're going to need to kind of talk about this in a little bit. Because it's kind of leading into what the film does and how it all works, okay? So, without any further ado, Dune. Now, part 2, again, will have spoilers. So, if you don't care, or if you've seen this version and you've seen this version and you don't care about seeing the film in the theaters or, whatever, you want to actually kind of have my opinion and then see it later, then that's fine. But just know that I will be spoiling certain parts of the film that actually will be kind of a surprise. If you've seen this version or the miniseries, you will kind of want to have that surprise because it's really cool. So, let's go into a little bit of a history lesson, okay? So, in the 1960s, 70s, okay, there was an Italian director by the name of Alejandro Jodorowsky. And anyone who's a Dune-phile like myself knows that back in the 1960s, 70s, Alejandro Jodorowsky wanted to make the ultimate Dune movie. Like, it was going to be, I think it was going to be like 2 parts long, and each part was going to be like 4 hours. And he sat down and spent millions. And I mean, this was back when movies cost hundreds of thousands. And millions was a thing unheard of, okay? And this director, sat down and he created all these storyboards. He created all this concept art. He had all this stuff. He had this grand vision. And, I mean, he had who was going to play the Emperor and who was going to play Leto and who was going to play Paul and all this kind of stuff. And then Lady Jessica and all these. He had all these, back before ensemble casts were ensemble casts, he was going to have the ensemble cast and all ensemble casts, okay? He was going to hire pretty much every single person in Hollywood that he could get onto this film, and even some people that were known from Italian cinema and European cinema and British cinema and American cinema, and he was going to make this entire film that was going to be the definitive version of Dune, okay? Well, the people that were doing some of the backers of the film, the studios, were kind of like, dude, you are spending so much money, and you haven't even shot a single frame yet. When are we going to see the movie? And so they kind of pulled out, and it never got made. And there's a huge documentary out there right now called Alejandro Jodorowsky's Dune. And it's actually where they track down Jodorowsky, they track down some of his family members, they track down his drawings, and they track down all of his stuff, and they kind of go in depth into what his vision, because they even have some parts of his script that were written where it's like they actually took like passages directly from the book and had them right there on the page, and how everything fit together. And I mean, he was going to have all these different things. And so there's a huge documentary out there. So if you want to find it, you can actually find the documentary. You can probably go to like Amazon or eBay or whatever, and you can find this documentary and you can actually watch it. It was pretty interesting to kind of learn some of the history of Jodorowsky's Dune. So the rights to Dune kind of languished for, I'd say it was about 8 or 9 years. I think he was supposed to come out with the movie in 1971. So it was like the late 60s, early 70s is when he was doing all of his pre-production. It didn't work. And so he was kind of like, well, okay, that didn't work. So the rights kind of floated, okay, until kind of the late 70s to early 80s, when they were picked up by filmmaker Dino De Laurentiis. He was a producer, and he produced a lot of really awesome films. And one of the major films that he produced is this one right here, okay? And how this one got made was he took some of the ideas that Alejandro Jodorowsky had made and kind of kept them along with the rights. And some of those concepts made it into this film because he hired a young, relatively unknown filmmaker at the time. I'm going to have to look. Named David Lynch. Okay. And David Lynch, this was before he did Twin Peaks, okay? And what's interesting is that on this one, this is the actual, like, insert, okay? Because there's two versions of the film. The original theatrical version is on side A, and then you flip it over to side B, and you have an extended version that Lynch was like, I'm not a part of, don't you dare put my name on it. So they put it under the name Alan Smithy, which is what they do when directors say, I don't want to be a part of it, and a studio releases something, they just put Alan Smithy on it. Okay. There's also a whole bunch of bonus materials on side A where they talk about some of the deleted scenes that you can see in the extended version, with producer Raffaella De Laurentiis, who is actually I think she's the daughter of Dino De Laurentiis, who passed away back in like early 2000, I think. They have Designing Dune, they have Dune FX, they have the models, they have the wardrobe, photo gallery, production notes, cast and filmmakers. And, I mean, if you've seen this movie, it's kind of infamous. There's, there's Sean Young, Kenneth McMillan plays the Baron, Fade Rautha is played by Sting, who was... I'm not even sure how he got the role, but he just like hams it up to. He just cranked it up to 11. Like he didn't care. And then you had Freddie Jones as Thufir Hawat. You had Kyle MacLachlan as Paul, Francesca Annis as Jessica. So it had a pretty good cast to it. Pretty all-star cast behind it. Jürgen Prochnow was Duke Leto, and he wanted it. So David Lynch actually wrote a script for the movie that was about at the end it was going to be about 2.5 to about 2 hours and 45 minutes, something like that. It was like right in that area, and the studio wanted a 2-hour movie because they didn't feel that people were going to sit through a 3-hour or 2.5-hour Dune movie, okay? And so they kind of compromised and they settled on 2 hours and 17 minutes, okay? One of the things that they introduced into this was in Dune, there's this thing called the weirding way. Okay, and it's a thing where the Bene Gesserit have learned how to control every single facet of their being. Bene Gesserit is an order of women, okay, and they're pretty set in their ways. And when you see how they do the Bene Gesserit in this film versus how they do the Bene Gesserit in the miniseries and in the new movie, it's a lot different. The one that they have here, which is weird, they're like shaved heads and they have like these really weird like headdresses on, and they have no eyebrows. It was really funky. It was like, what the hell? But the Bene Gesserit in the books, the Bene Gesserit have the ability to control their bodily functions, okay? And they can control every single muscle and nerve in their body. They call that the weirding way. It's how they fight, okay? They've created this style of fighting to where they can move almost superhumanly, okay, to be able to grab onto people, to be able to do things, because that's how they work. Well, in this film, they took that weirding way and they translated it into these weird sound-activated laser modules. Because they wanted it, I guess, more sci-fi. Whatever that means. And so they created these laser guns that were sound activated. You know, they had these little control modules that went around their throat with a little tiny microphone that comes up to their mouth, towards their mouth, and they go, wah. And their sound goes into this little gun that sits on their hand, and it produces this little orange laser that shoots out. Why? Who knows? Ask David Lynch. I don't know. Okay? Because that's nowhere to be found in any of the books. Okay? And so when I was a teenager, I had seen this. I'd actually seen this sitting on the shelf at my local video store. Okay? This is the video cassette version of Dune. Okay? The 2 hours and 17 minutes version of Dune. Okay? And I would see this, and I would look at the tagline, which says, "A place beyond your imagination, a place beyond your dreams, a movie beyond your imagination," and I rented it one day because I wanted to see it. Okay, so I rented it. I took it home. I watched it, and I went, "What the hell did I just watch?" I didn't understand a thing. I was walking along at my local library, and I happened to see Dune in the paperback section. And I went, I wonder if that is this. It was. Completely different. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that this is a bad film. Far from it. Still a good film. Okay? Not the best. Like some people will tell you. It's not the best. Okay? We'll get to the best. It's good, don't get me wrong. I mean, it has elements of the book in it, and it has sequences from the book directly in it. But what they failed to capture was a lot of the essence of the book, okay? And that's why we're going to kind of talk about this next part, this next kind of history of Dune, is the rights kind of languished for a while. After Dino De Laurentiis passed away, a lot of the movies that he made, the rights to certain franchises and stuff, kind of reverted back to wherever they were. So the Herbert estate kind of took back their things. In the late 90s, Brian Herbert, Frank Herbert's son, Frank Herbert passed away in 1984. He actually lived to see this movie very briefly, and then ended up kind of giving it his blessing, and then he passed away. So Dune as a franchise, kind of stagnated, because this movie came out in 1984. The last book, Chapter House, came out in 1984, 1985, something like that. And Frank Herbert passed away around that time, and so there was a huge lapse in Dune. Okay, so you could read Frank Herbert's 6 original books, and you could watch this movie, and that was it. That was everything. Dune was this movie and those 6 books. To which the book was much better than the movie. Okay? Because the movie gave Paul this, like, messiah complex, where he was like, I'm the chosen one, yay, I'm gonna go lead the Fremen to freedom, and then like at the end he makes it rain. That was nowhere in the book. Because in the book, Paul doesn't want to be the Messiah. Like, he's kind of thrust into this destiny. And he's kind of the unwilling participant of it. Okay? He's kind of like, we're all in this cart, and we're like, going. Doesn't matter. Because events are now in motion that can't be undone. That's Paul's attitude of it. Okay? So, in the late 90s, okay, when Brian Herbert, Frank Herbert's son, and Kevin J. Anderson were starting to write some new Dune novels, okay, there was talk of, wow, you know, Dune is going to have more books. Awesome! And so this young producer, director, writer named John Harrison came along and said, I want to make a miniseries of Dune, because I think we can make a miniseries and we can have it tell the story in the 3 parts without the constraints of a studio telling us, no, you can't do this, yes, you can do that, no, you can't do this. He was like, we can have it be the miniseries. We can have it be an event. And it was a 3-night event. I mean, it was amazing, because I remember I was at college, and there were a whole bunch of friends, and they were like, dude, on the Sci-Fi Channel, there's going to be Dune. And I'm like, no way. And they were like, yeah, dude, man, it's going to be awesome. And we got Frank Herbert's Dune. Okay? Now, unlike this Hollywood version of Dune, where they tried to find a whole bunch of actors and go, this is going to be how we're going to do things, they decided that they were going to cast relative unknowns as, with a few known actors here and there, okay, that would make this, a miniseries worth watching. And so they took this unknown actor named Alec Newman, okay, and you've actually seen him since this, and I'll get to that in a minute. But they took this unknown actor named Alec Newman. Okay, that's him here, right here in the middle. Okay, that's him. And they cast him as Paul Atreides, and they were like, hey, you know what? We're gonna have this unknown actor as Paul Atreides, and he did a good job with the material that was written, with the sets that were done, with the characters that were there. He did a really good job. I really enjoyed him. They also have Ian Mcneese. You've seen him in White Noise. You've seen him in the production of A Christmas Carol. Let me see here. Oh, this version right here with Patrick Stewart in 1999. He played Fezziwig. And there's another actor from this miniseries, Saskia Reeves, who actually plays the wife of Bob Cratchit in this film, plays Jessica in this film. Okay, they actually wanted Alice Krige. She was coming off of the First Contact movie. She had gotten pregnant, and she wasn't able to do the miniseries, so they ended up going with Saskia Reeves. And the funny part of it is, in the Children of Dune miniseries, which is right there, this brown one right there, they ended up, because Saskia Reeves was pregnant, they ended up casting Alice Krige in the role. And I think Alice Krige was a little bit better of an actress in that role than Saskia Reeves was, even though Saskia Reeves does have a really good... she does have a really good Jessica in this miniseries. Okay, just Children of Dune, this miniseries right there, is actually much better with Alice Krige than would have been with Saskia Reeves. Okay, Alice Krige just kind of has a better thing to it. And then it also had William Hurt, okay? And he was kind of the actor at the time because people knew who he was. He had made a couple of big films in Hollywood, so people were kind of like, oh my gosh, it's William Hurt. He played Duke Leto, and he was top billed. It was funny. He was top billed. William Hurt in Frank Herbert's Dune. He was Duke Leto Atreides. He was pretty much only in the first miniseries, first part of the miniseries, and then in succeeding parts, he's actually just... He's there, it's just a vision of him, you know, and you don't really... So it was kind of like, really, guys? But that's how they were selling it, was, oh, see, we have this big Hollywood actor, okay? And then they also gave a much bigger part to Irulan, the princess of Shaddam IV, who is, if you've read the book... her little parts are up in the top. Okay, she actually kind of like talks, and so she'll come up with this thing where she's like, you know, where it was like in my father's house, and then it would have like some things about what her father did, and then it would precede a chapter. Frank Herbert had this way of like putting up a little passage from something, okay, and then that would precede the chapter. And you would read that little blurb, and it would kind of give you kind of a behind-the-scenes or kind of a secondary look at what was going on prior to the chapter that you were going to read. And it generally had something to do with either meta stuff happening outside of the immediate story of the chapter, or it was directly related to what was going on in the chapter, because it was like, say, the first book, it was Irulan's like recollections that she was writing down, you know, after you know, certain events happened, and she was kind of a chronicler, and so she was kind of writing down a whole bunch of things, okay, about Paul Atreides, about why he did things, about how things worked. So they had this relative unknown English actress named Julie Cox, and she played Irulan Carino in this one. And then they also got famous Italian actor Giancarlo Giannini, who you may remember from the Hannibal movie, which... yep, that one right there. This movie. The actual... Not Hannibal Rising, but this was this was right before Red Dragon. This was like 1999, I think. And he played the Italian inspector who was trying to track down Hannibal Lecter in the film. Okay, so he did this, and then he did this. Okay, so I had known, and he had also done a couple of other Hollywood movies at this point. So he was kind of a known, a known actor. So it was, you know, you had a few known actors in different capacities in this miniseries, and it was a really well done miniseries. Okay, because how they did it was they just kind of filled a bunch of sound stages with sand. Okay, and then they would make like a small dune, a small hill of dune, and then of a dune, and then they would have like these big, what they called translights. They had these big curtains that they would drape in the background, okay, of the set, and then the people would like run along in front of those, or walk along in front of those, or whatever, and then whatever else they needed, they could just do in green screen, or they could do CG, or whatever, okay. But this also brought in a lot more of the religion of the Fremen, okay, which we'll get to. So this one had a lot more of that sort of religion aspect of the Fremen, and that was something that was kind of absent from this version of Dune. That in the extended version, one of the deleted scenes was the fight with this character named Jamis that Paul has, okay? And it was something that in this version of Dune, they did, like, it was just sort of a, you know, Jamis was like, I invoke the Amtal rule, and then they just kind of fight, and Paul kills him, and then they take him off, and they do some things. In this one, they actually did it more towards the book, which was they go to the place and then Jamis calls him out. And he's like, Amtal, I invoke Amtal, and all this kind of stuff. And so they had a really, really good Fremen aspect to it, where they kind of brought in this like religious aspect, and then it kind of follows with the Bene Gesserit, where Paul's kind of like, Mom, your stupid Bene Gesserit have been here, and they've created this religion that these people are worshiping, and now I'm the focal point of that religion. And that's going to end up really screwing up the galaxy. Thank you. And that's something that is really, really needed when you have something like this. Okay? Because that's what the book is. So now I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about kind of leading up to the movie, and then I'm going to kind of generally kind of go over the movie itself. Okay? So I'm going to set this actually right back up in here, because I'm not going to need it anymore. But back in 2010, I think it was, there was a director by the name of Peter Berg. Okay, he actually directed Battleship. Okay, which I'm not sure I have readily available. I think it's actually right up. Oh, it's right up in here. No, I don't have it readily accessible. I'm not going to worry about it. But anyway, he directed a movie called Battleship, okay? And a lot of people were kind of like, that was your dumb movie. I'm like, it's a board game. How the hell are you going to make a movie of a board game? Honestly. Somebody want to tell me? Okay? I think he actually did a pretty good job by introducing kind of a supernatural alien element to a what was essentially a World War II board game, okay, of like the Pacific Theater, because you had carriers and you had battleships and you had destroyers and you had subs, and they all tried to blow each other up, and that was kind of the whole point of it. They incorporated the grid. They incorporated everything that they needed to. It was a good film. I don't know what people have. I don't know why people are bashing it. It was a great film. It had some really good action set pieces. It had some decent, some decent revelations about the aliens. It had some decent things to where you could say, you know what, this is actually really cool. Okay? But because that movie bombed at the box office, there was a lot of people out there who were kind of like, oh, well, I don't know that Peter Berg is going to be able to do the movie justice. And a lot of the studio executives kind of felt the same way, because his version of Dune was going to be one movie similar to this. And I'm sitting there going, come on, man, the book is in 3 parts. This miniseries was in 3 parts. You can't do it. I mean, if you made it 3 hours long, you might be able to get away with it. But even then, it's still you're gonna kind of condense it down into something that, like, this miniseries, each part was like an hour and a half to 2 hours long in and of itself. Okay? And when you look at this movie at 2 hours and 17 minutes, things fly. Now, they do that whole, like, they have like a little, person, kind of talking about Paul, like, oh, Paul got better, and, the Fremen, halted spice production, and there's things that went on, and, this happened, and that happened, and, and then they kind of gloss over some of the parts of the book that, it's like, you kind of go, now, wait a minute, that's kind of an interesting part of the book. I want to know more about that. Okay? And so, yeah, things just fly along. Okay? So, Peter Berg left the film, went and did Battleship, and they didn't bring him back. Which, in my opinion, was probably the right decision. Now, thinking from today, 2021, watching Dune. Okay? Because Denis Villeneuve is an amazing director. Okay? He did Arrival. He's done, hang on just 1 second here. Let me grab my, come on. My phone's being a little punk here. Let me just kind of load up thing. He did Blade Runner 2049. He did Arrival. He did Sicario, the original Sicario. So he's done movies that have an esoteric nature to them. So doing something like this, where it is very esoteric, especially if you've read the book, and you know what the themes are, and you know how the themes work, that's going to kind of give you that, point of, oh, okay, that's what he's going for. So if you've seen Arrival, you've seen Blade Runner 2049, you kind of understand how his mind works and how that translates to this, which is, and I'm going to say this outright, amazing. Okay? He is an amazing director, and this was actually probably one of his best movies so far. Okay, Arrival was amazing. Don't get me wrong, I used to have it. I think my ex actually got it in the divorce, but Arrival was an amazing film because it had this sort of like esoteric nature where this like ship comes down and there's like these aliens and we're trying to communicate with them. We don't know what their intentions are. We don't know if they mean to attack us and kill us or befriend us and try to give us information. We just don't know. And so there's all this tension in the story, and it really and that kind of story really brings Dune. It really lends itself well to Dune because, he can then take some of the themes in Dune and he can get them across in a way that you can actually see it and you can go, wait a minute. Oh, okay, I see what you're going for there. There was this part in the book and you've done it this way. Good job. Okay. So, let me just say this. When John Harrison cast Alec Newman as Paul Atreides, a kind of a relative unknown actor at the time, he was British, but, nowadays we got British people that do, American accents all the time. For instance, Henry Cavill, Tom Holland in Spider-Man. So, it's you got these crazy, esoteric stuff. So he cast an unknown to us French actor by the name of Timothee Chalamet, okay, to play Paul Atreides. And I will say this, that was probably the best choice, because if it had been some known or even a semi-known actor here in the United States, I think it probably would have destroyed the illusion. Because you would have been like, well, that guy played this role. He's not really Paul Atreides. But having an unknown in that role, okay, he can bring his own sort of thought process and acting ability to the role when Denis kind of comes in and says, hey man, I want you to do this. And he goes, okay, I can do that. Without question. Because he's looking at the script, and he's looking at the director, who's also written the script, and gone, yeah, I see what you're going for. Okay? You have Rebecca Ferguson in the role of Lady Jessica Atreides. If you've seen the amazing Mission Impossible movies, there was Rogue Nation and Fallout. She was amazing in those. And she is an amazing, amazing actress. I absolutely love her. And her as Lady Jessica was like Alice Kriege in the Children of Dune miniseries, okay? Because it was absolutely just the perfect cast, okay? You had Zendaya as I think in this one they went back to Chani, which was how they pronounced it in this movie. They went back to that pronunciation, although they kept Harkonnen from this one and not Harkonnen from that one. Go figure. You had Oscar Isaac as Duke Leto, and I think really how he got that role was, and I could be wrong about this. I haven't read the IMDb page because I've tried to stay away from it until I saw the film. So I probably will read it, and then, like as I do more on this movie after it comes out on DVD, and then they have the second part coming out. Once I get to that, then I'll kind of talk a little bit more about his casting. But I think really what kind of got him that was the role that he played as Poe Dameron in the Star Wars films, because he actually, kind of plays that sort of same style of leadership type character that you saw in Rise of Skywalker and The Last Jedi, where Poe is trying to, be a leader, but he's failing and he doesn't understand, but he still wants to be a leader. And that's kind of what Duke Leto is. Duke Leto has a leadership position. He's given the fiefdom of Arrakis, and he's told, you have to go there. It's the Emperor. He's like, you have to go. And he's like, yes, we will go. And he's kind of like, damn, I know this is a trap, but I'm going to go anyway. And the byplay between Timothee and Oscar is amazing. Like, their chemistry on screen is phenomenal. And also between Oscar and Rebecca is amazing. And I know that that's one thing that casting directors look for, especially when they have actors like this, where they have to have that kind of chemistry, because it's already in the story. It's already established that, Jessica and Leto are who they are, and you can't change that. Like, you can't have something where it's like, are they, aren't they? No, it's established, and so you have to have chemistry between them, even though there's a little bit of friction. There's also Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho. He's amazing in everything he does. I mean, hands down, Jason Momoa is Jason Momoa. And actually, as Duncan Idaho, he has that sort of vulnerability that Duncan has, and he really embodies that sort of like, I am here to protect House Atreides, and I am gonna, that whole line from the trailer, which didn't actually make it into the film, but where he kind of goes, let's fight like demons, and it's like, hell yeah, that is a total Duncan Idaho line, Stellan Skarsgard, if you've seen, and I don't have it readily available, but if you've seen the King Arthur movie from with Clive Owen, Wayne Grufford, Keira Knightley, there's Stellan Skarsgard plays the leader of the Saxons. Okay, and the Saxons are there to just kind of kill and rape and pillage. Okay, and Stellan Skarsgard has this sort of like quiet malice. And if you've seen this movie, you'll know. Because he's in this one too. And I think that those two movies really are kind of how they saw him as the Baron Harkonnen. And he is... yeah, I mean, he has that sort of deep basso voice that you imagine the Baron having, because that's how Frank Herbert describes him in the book. It's, he's got this deep, rumbling basso voice, okay, because he's fat, he's huge. And Stellan Skarsgård, they had to put him in a fat suit to make him into the Baron. And it's amazing, because there are scenes where you see him and you can't tell what's prosthetic and what's Stellan, because he can act through the makeup, and he can embody that makeup, and so you don't see the prosthesis. You just think he's there. That's him, and he is so good. His delivery, I mean, he's in the background most of the time. You really don't see him up close, except for, his face. But even when he's so far away that you don't really see him, he still has this air of just malice It is amazing. He is one amazing actor. I really, really like him. And then you have Josh Brolin as Guernie Halleck, and he is perfect as Guernie Halleck. And I know that in this movie, they had Patrick Stewart, and Patrick Stewart is amazing as Guernie Halleck. And some of the stuff that they had in this one, where he was quoting some things. Now, I think some of it's in the... They might have had a couple lines of him doing that, but I know in the extended version, they actually have a lot more of that. Where he's like, as a wild ass, in the desert, I go about my work or whatever. And but Josh Brolin has that down, and he does that. So I can't wait to see him in the second one. Javier Bardem, who was the villain in Skyfall. He was the villain in No Country for Old Men. Amazing Spanish actor, plays Stilgar, and he's only in the film probably 10 total minutes. But damn, does he make his presence known. I mean, he just has that presence, okay? He's fucking amazing, okay? Like, just hands down, probably one of the best actors, and I can't wait to see more of him in the sequel, because, again, amazing actor. I loved him in Skyfall. He was really good in No Country for Old Men. No matter what he does, he just has that presence, okay? Now, one of the things that was kind of... and I also need to mention that Dave Bautista is in the film as the Beast Raban. Okay? Now, they didn't bring in Fade Rautha, so I'm assuming that they're going to have him in the sequel, because they didn't cast anybody as Fade Rautha. So we didn't get to see a Fade. And I think that was on purpose, because I think they wanted to focus more on Raban and his sort of... And if you saw Skyfall, or no, Spectre, after Skyfall, if you saw Spectre, you saw Beast Raban, because Hinks, Dave Bautista's character in that film, is very much the Beast Raban. He's just this quiet, sort of, he just has that... I call it the wrestling face, okay? It's when he's the heel in the wrestling, he's just got that sort of look on his face, right? That we're so used to in the wrestling arena that we saw in Spectre, which is actually right there. Okay, here's Skyfall, that's Spectre. And so we saw that Hinks coming out in the Beast Raban. Amazing, okay? Now, probably one of the most interesting casting choices, and one of the most interesting kind of weird choices, was they used... They changed Liet Kynes from a male to a female. In this movie, he was played by Max von Sydow. In the other movie, he's played by Carol Dabry, who played in the original Mission Impossible. He also played a priest in the second film, but he plays Liet Kynes in the miniseries. Okay, right? And so they decided that they were going to change Liet to a female. Don't know why, but it doesn't matter, because she has a presence in the film where you don't care that character is either male or a female, because kind of like, how you could have Felix Leiter in the original Bond films as a white guy, and then you see him in the Craig Bond films, which are right here, as Jeffrey Wright, a colored man, a black man. Fine, I don't care. Jeffrey Wright's an amazing actor, and he did a wonderful job as Felix Leiter, and that's something that you can change. And I mean, you could probably even have made it Felicia Leiter and had it be a woman, and nobody would have cared, as long as the character, the core concept of the character stays the same. Okay, and so honestly, kind of like how they changed, in No Time to Die, they had Nomi as 007 because it's just a number. As long as they weren't trying to call her James Bond or some kind of variation thereof, nobody cares. Because again, 007 is just a number. So are they going to, take that number and give it to Lashana Lynch and have her just be the new 007? I don't care. If that's what they do, I'm still going to go watch it. But it's not going to be Bond. You know what I'm saying? It's not James Bond. But that's something that's endemic to the Bond series. What I'm talking about here is that you have a character that is established in the novel as a male. Totally fine. Okay? But when they change that, okay, he's now a she, okay? And Chani is still the daughter of Liet, which is fine. Okay? But she's still the judge of the change, and she's still the planetologist. And her presence on screen, some of the fighting that she does, some of the things that she does, some of the stuff that's going on, she really kind of embodies that character. And that's good, because it makes the character seem more realistic. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not just, it's this character that we threw out there, and, by the way, we changed it to a female, and who cares? They really paid attention to what is the character, and then when they hired her, they brought her in, and they said, okay, here's the book version, here's the script version, we want you to kind of embody this character. And she went, great, what do you want me to do? How do you want me to do this? And Denis was able to say, okay, we want you to go like this. And then she went out there and did that. And that's the character that you see from the book into the movie. It doesn't matter if it's a male or female, as long as that character stays the same. And that was one of the things that, when I heard about it the first time, I went, wait, what? They changed Liet to a woman? But then the person was like, yeah, they did, but it doesn't matter because she's Liet. Like, the same that you get in the book, Liet, you get in the movie, Liet. I was like, oh, okay. And then when I was watching the movie, I went, wow, that is amazing. Like, literally, that is amazing that they could keep that character consistent. Kind of like with Felix Leiter. They changed it from Jack Lord, David Hedison, amazing Felix Leiters, to Jeffrey Wright, who made that character, took that Felix Leiter character and made it his own, but it's still the same Felix that we've known from the books and the movies and everything like that, still the same CIA Felix Leiter. And you're like, good, I like that. We don't care when that's what you do. It's when you try to change the core characters. That's what we kind of get a little bit miff. And also, there's a guy named Chen Chang who plays Dr. Yui. And, I mean, they had the nice diamond tattoo on his forehead. The Suk Doctor, though, they changed the Suk Doctor from, having medical instruments to be able to scan people to more, Eastern religion style, acupuncture, chakra, feeling, the person, feeling their head and, putting their hand on their head like this and, kind of touching them in the back and, that kind of stuff, okay? And I think that's okay. That's because we've never understood what the actual Suk Doctors were. Now, the only thing that they did that I was kind of was, I think in the book, Dr. Yui had a braid, and then he had a little ring on it that was also part of his station, I think. Which they didn't do, which is fine. It's not a big deal. It's only a minor detail in the book. But they did keep a lot of that character very consistent throughout the film. And they didn't include the subplot about, who's the traitor, that kind of stuff. They more just kind of went, it just happens, and which is that movie. So this Dune movie kind of blends a lot of this film and the miniseries into a kind of an amalgamation of the two, but it works on so many levels. And I was amazed at how much they were able to pack in the 2.5 hours that I was in the theater. It was phenomenal. I mean, it was just amazing. I could not believe how well done that film was, okay? The music, this is another thing that probably needs to be mentioned. The music was absolutely phenomenal. It was very atmospheric. It was very, like, I was in an Atmos theater, and it was like it would shake you to your core at times. Because, you know, it's like that's what Atmos does. It actually, you know, kind of shakes you in your seat. And, you know, and it's like, yeah, there were parts where it would be like, you know, things would happen where you get like a little moment of silence and then like, you know, kind of a sound, and you're like, whoa, that was crazy. So yeah, they did a really good job, and I just want to say that the second film, when it comes, is probably going to be equally as amazing. It will be interesting to see who they're going to cast as the Emperor, Irulan, Fade, because they have to have some of that come in. Okay, so this is I've been talking now for about 50 minutes. Okay, so this is going to be the end of part 1. I'm going to come back in part 2, and like I said, this is going to be spoiler territory. Okay, so if you haven't seen the film, go and watch the film, and then come back and watch part 2, because you're going to want to see it. Okay, because I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about the influences of this, and what Denis kind of brought to the thing. 'Cause I have to talk about it. It's not something that I can just sit there and go, you know. I have to talk about it, so I'm going to talk about it. So if you haven't seen it, go watch the film in the theater, come back and do it. Unless you're like, you know what, I'm probably not going to watch it for a long time, so I don't care. I'll just kind of listen to what you have to say and make my mind then. So anyway, smash that like button. Hit subscribe. Share me with your friends. Drop a comment below. Did you see the film? What did you think of the film? Let me know below. And just keep it locked here for Russ's Movie Corner. And I'm going to be doing some more DVD reviews. And I'll probably talk a little bit more about that film and this film, the miniseries and the 2 miniseries, in the future. Just because I kind of want to, especially after the second part of Dune comes out and we kind of find out what the future holds for Dune. I'll probably talk a little bit more about some of those things. And so, anyway, thank you for watching and have a great day.